Welcome to the Everything Building Envelope podcast. On this show, we discuss topics relating to the exterior building envelope, such as waterproofing, glazing, cladding, roofing, and more. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. For previous episodes, show notes, and bonus video content, check out our website, everythingbuildingenvelope.com. Now, here's your host for the Everything Building Envelope podcast, Paul Beers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Everything Building Envelope podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about dynamic glass, which is an emerging technology that I think is a lot of interest to a lot of the listeners. I'd like to welcome our guest, Jeff Riley. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Jeff is a sales executive in Florida with View Dynamic Glass, so he knows a lot about this. Jeff, could you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been in commercial real estate in some capacity since 2004. Worked for owner and operator developer of a multifamily office, worked in property management, worked for CBRE, largest brokerage in the world, and I've been working as a sales executive with View Glass and kind of blown away with my experience there. So excited to tell your listeners about it.
Great. So tell us a little bit about View Glass and also about View Dynamic Glass.
Sure. So View Glass manufactures smart windows that tint electronically in response to the weather and position of the sun. You can think of it like transition lenses for buildings. So we eliminate the need for interior blinds. We remove the functional need for exterior sunshade. We help reduce utility costs by about 20%. We shrink HVAC systems. We bring a whole bunch of lead or well points to any project. We're actually one of the most economical ways to earn lead points if you're thinking in terms of dollars per point. The product itself is electrochromic glass, which has been around for decades. It's actually in the rearview mirror of your car. But View Glass was the first company to mass produce it for use in commercial real estate. What makes our glass really unique is the software system we use called Intelligence. Each individual window is programmed to tint just before the sun reaches it. So we know where the sun is going to be on June 10th, 2045 in Miami, Florida at 10 a.m. So we know that the windows on the east side of the building will need to be in tint level 4, which is our darkest tint. We're getting ready to tint the windows in the south as the sun moves across the horizon. But on the north and west sides, we're in tint level 1, letting everyone enjoy the view and bring in as much healthy daylight as possible. We manufacture everything at our plant in Olive Branch, Mississippi, about 20 minutes from Memphis. It's an 800,000 square foot massive facility that will blow you away if you get a chance to see it in person. I believe we have the largest clean room in the world in our factory, and a bunch of other really cool stuff that I can't talk about because they are trade secrets. We've got some great clients, including a few Fortune 500 companies. If there's one thing that they all have in common is that they are risk averse. So our company and our product have been vetted up, down, left, right, any way you can think of, and we've been selected by Delta, FedEx, Nestle, Ford, Overstock.com, Oracle, Google, Apple, Wells Fargo. We've done convention centers, sporting arenas, and airports, including Levi Stadium where the San Francisco 49ers play, the Charlotte, San Francisco airports. In the hospitality space, we've got Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, and healthcare. My favorite is probably the Humber River Hospital in Toronto, the first all-digital hospital in North America. We've got many more there. College campuses, we've got Duke, Georgia Tech, Harvard, Clemson, University of Texas, to name just a handful. We've got installations from Alaska down to Miami, and hundreds more in the works.
Wow. So obviously this isn't a fringe product, and this is obviously working its way into the mainstream. Let me ask you how the glass itself gets incorporated into a building. So you guys make the glass, but not the frames, right?
Yeah, we can work with just about any framing system. So punch out, curtain wall, we haven't really run into any challenges where we haven't been able to meet the architectural design requirements.
Does the glass come in different configurations? I mean, can you get it in a laminated glass unit or an insulated glass unit? Or
IGU is each insulated glass unit. We use double pane There are some exceptions, but generally it's double pane. We have a few different color options. Most people choose clear, which has a slight bluish tint, and it's darker tints from the inside, which most people like. But we haven't really had there aren't many things that we haven't been able to accomplish. We can do laminated glass, so we can meet Miami-Dade hurricane code requirements.
You said, let's see if I pronounce this right, electrochromatic? Is that what it is? That's
Electrochromic.
right.
The electrochromic. Don't worry. A lot of people have trouble with it.
Close. So is that a film that's on the glass, or what? Or it's a coating, obviously. How exactly is it?
So it's a coating that goes on the interior of the exterior pane of glass. And it's an incredibly thin, I think it's 5 microns thick. It's 1/50th of a human hair. So the background, the company is based in Silicon Valley, so these are, semi-chip conductor guys by training. So think of it sort of as a massive semiconductor chip. So it's an incredible amount of technology. We've got 500 plus patents out there in the works. So that's kind of, the glass itself isn't anything special. It's the coating that goes on the glass. And we just have metal oxides, which have opposing properties, and we send an electronic charge through them. We can transition ions from one side to the other. And since it's clear on one side, dark on the other side, and we have a couple pit stops along the way, tint levels 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So you mentioned that the glass can be programmed to change properties as the times of the day change and solar exposure changes. So does it, I'm guessing it needs to be integrated with some sort of control system to basically tell it what to do? Is that a good way to say it?
Yes. Yep, and that's something that we provide. So we provide the software system that will run the entire operation, but we do have 2 additional overrides. So we've got a weather sensor on the roof that's looking for cloud cover, and it feeds into daily or hourly weather updates.
So the glass changes properties depending on the solar exposure and the time of the day and whatnot. How does that work as far as what the system does, and how's the system work within the infrastructure of the building?
Sure. So we've got a software system which we provide and program and can update remotely. If you ever want to make any changes, or if we have a new version of the software, that can all be uploaded remotely. That's something we configure for each individual project. There's also a weather sensor on the roof, so we can detect if there's cloud cover, and we have weather feeds which tell us whether this is a passing cloud or if it's going to be cloudy all day. And if it's cloudy all day, we'll clear the glass so people are enjoying as much natural light as possible. And we also have an iPhone app or wall controls, so you can manually change the glass from different tint levels. Most common use would be if you wanted to do a PowerPoint presentation. Normally you close the blinds and turn off the light. Instead, you press a button on the wall to tint the glass, and that can actually be connected into Outlook to have it done automatically ahead of time. But each individual IGU has what we call a pigtail. It's a little cord that allows power to flow to the window. And each pigtail connects up to a trunk line, which runs around the perimeter of the building. And the trunk line feeds into a control panel, which usually goes into the utility room. So that can be locked and secured, usually in the same place where you have your modem and IT equipment. So all that's sort of self-contained.
So I just have to say, it really sounds great that you can program it not only for weather patterns, but for real-time weather that's going on outside. And then, like you were saying, even if you need to darken the room for an audio-visual presentation or something like that. That sounds like, technology at its finest.
Yeah, thank you. I happen to agree. I'm a little biased, but I agree.
Let me ask you this. Are there interior applications for this technology as well?
No, just exterior. Some people hear the phrase electrochromic glass and they think about the switchable privacy glass, which kind of turns to a milky white, and that's just for interiors. Likewise, our product is just for exteriors.
Okay. So, we talked about this a little bit, but let's sort of run through it again. What are the benefits to the occupants?
So the tangible benefits that start on day one are the ongoing energy savings, the money saved from not purchasing any interior blinds, and the continuous views of the outside world. There's a wow factor walking into one of our buildings where it's wall to wall, floor to ceiling, just glass wherever you look. The intangible benefits, which are harder to quantify but more valuable in the long term, in my opinion, come from health and wellness, productivity, and recruiting and retention. And we've got some great independent studies on our website that show the remarkable benefits of natural light. People who have access to natural light take fewer sick days, they use less pain medication in healthcare environments, and are 6 to 15% more productive when they have access to natural light. So if you were moving into a new building and you had your first pick, you could take any office you want. You're going to pick the corner office, right? You just feel physically better when you have those views and natural light. And even if you think 6 to 15% increase in productivity is unrealistic, think about what 1% would do for most companies. The single largest expense for nearly every company is payroll. So if you can make your people just 1% more productive, less time adjusting the blinds or getting up to get water, then upgrading your windows, pays for itself in spades. And on that same note, recruiting and retention, the war for talent is a big issue. Ask anyone who works in the consulting or commercial real estate business, and they'll tell you companies are doing everything they can to recruit millennials as the baby boomers start to retire. And we're talking a major demographic shift. And if you can create an environment where people feel happy and healthy and valued like they do at Overstock.com, it makes the job of recruiting much easier. They actually have buses bring in MBA students, local universities bring buses of MBA students to see Overstock.com's headquarters and to show students what it looks like when a company invests in its people and their environment. Tell me the CEO and HR folks don't love that. MBA is being delivered to their front door. And likewise, look at WeWork, which is now valued at almost $20 billion. They didn't invent co-working. It's been around for decades. All they did was create a better environment. And people are drawn to WeWork offices like a magnet. It's unbelievable. But that's the type of environment that we help create.
So, you and I, obviously, and I think a lot of our listeners, we pay attention to things like the windows and daylighting and stuff like that. Can the average user tell that this is going on while they're building, or is it sort of a passive where it's just, optimizing the environment and maybe they don't even notice it?
It's more of the latter. The first week in any installation, people are sort of fixated on the glass. The glass is transitioning behind them as they work, so they're talking on the phone, but looking at the window and watching the glass transition through different states. And then after the first week, it just sort of happens in the background and they forget it's even there. So it's very user-friendly, self-sufficient. Kind of the same way you don't notice the air conditioner turning on and off. It just works. Our glass works in the same way.
So I know you've touched on this along the way also, but developers and owners and developers like it. Now, when I think of owners and developers, no offense to anybody, but they're very focused on money as well. They should be. They've got budgets and performas and things like that. So, you've obviously, to make the sale, got to get over I'm assuming it's more expensive than regular glass.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong. And you've got to obviously get over that hurdle. But what are the benefits to owners and developers? Sure.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. For owners and developers, they're looking at us in terms of ROI, which really means NOI. Will view glass drive NOI? Because that's how buildings are valued, just NOI, net operating income, and cap rate. And the answer is yes, and we actually provide a double bump to NOI because we can impact both top-line revenue growth, with faster lease-up times, improved occupancy, which allow you to start pushing rates, and a reduction in costs, since your utility bill on average will be about 20% less. That's heating, cooling, and lighting. The University of Washington did a study on one of our buildings that was retrofitted in Seattle with view glass, and the energy savings came out to 17.7%, about $28,000 per year added to the NOI. So if that building sells at a 5 or 6 cap, that's somewhere between $460,000 and $560,000 in added value. That's $500,000. And that's in Seattle. There's not a lot of sunshine in Seattle, so think about what the numbers would look like here in Florida. So just on energy savings alone, when you translate it into NOI, which drive the building value at a 20x multiple in most Class A CBDs, we often pay for ourselves out of the gate. And another way we add substantial value is since we do such a great job controlling heat and glare, in our darkest tint, which is tint level 4, we've got a heat gain coefficient of 0.09. We're not 0.9, 0.09. So we're essentially blocking all of the heat, even in direct sunlight. So that means you're able to use all of the space inside your office. In most buildings, the space around the perimeter of the building and by the windows is only used for file cabinets or walkways, because within 8 feet of the windows, it gets too hot and uncomfortable. Interior architects will set back 8 feet away before they put the first cubicle. So you may have an office or conference room in your old building which is too hot to use at certain times of day. The new guy or the new professor gets stuck with that office. But in buildings with view glass, it's all usable. And it's not just regular space, but it's actually the best space in the building, the area with the best views, and there's a lot of it. If you're talking 8 feet around the east, south, and west sides of the building on each floor. So that means as an occupant, even if you're paying top of market rents, you're getting a better deal because you're getting more usable space, more bang for your buck, and the flexibility to expand as your business grows. So you don't need to find another 5,000 square feet to lease in 3 years because your company is growing or because your college has enrolled more students than expected. You can just move desks around in your existing location.
Nice. Let me ask you this. You mentioned retrofit. So what's involved with retrofitting an existing building with view glass?
Sure. So it's not much more complicated than, anytime you're pulling out, on an older building, replacing a single pane with double pane. The difference is that because each of our ITUs requires a pigtail, an electrical current, and that you need to run sort of a big, almost an extension cord around the perimeter, that's an additional cost, labor cost, a glazier cost, that needs to be accounted for. So glazers generally like us because they can, charge a couple percentage points more to work with our glass because it takes, they learn it pretty quickly, but they can charge a mild premium for it. And we have a low voltage electrician which plugs everything in, which will plug everything in to make sure it's connected.
Does that wire have to be like inside the wall, or could you, do something with, say, put it behind a baseboard or something like that?
Yep, we've gone up above, we've gone below, and actually Overstock left it all exposed because they thought they loved our glass so much they wanted to, when they're giving tours, they want to be able to point out, here, check out our windows, here's how they work, we get these beautiful views of the mountains all day, and look at the cords above. Each individual window has its own special configuration, almost like its own IP address. And actually, that also allows us to do some pretty cool things, like on college campuses especially, but we can spell out letters using, if you think of each window as a pixel. So we've got some kind of cool, creative school spirit type stuff happening.
When you say you can spell out letters, was that within an individual piece of glass, or is that just sort of
No. If you think of
like the football game where everybody holds up different color placards?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Or in Seattle, you can spell out the 12 for the 12th man. That's kind of the Seattle Seahawks rallying cry. So we've got buildings that can spell that out.
Is it possible to retrofit this glass into an existing frame? Has anybody done that?
And we generally drill. You need to drill a hole to account for the pigtails so we can make sure we get the wiring in. So there's a little bit of extra attention required, but it is possible.
Yeah, because sometimes when you look at retrofits, there's a big difference if you can keep, and you can't always do this. I mean, most of the time you can't, but if you can keep an existing frame, improve it, and put the glass in, obviously it cuts down on schedule time, dirt, dust, all that. So it seems like that would be a good benefit if you could do that.
Yeah.
So let's run through what some of I know you mentioned a lot of installations. What are some of the applications and what kind of projects are fits for view glass?
So any larger building, preferably 100,000 square feet and up, which you might call Class A, or a building that's pursuing a LEED or a WELL certification. So view glass, you're right, talking about the cost earlier, it is a premium product. It's an iPhone, and not everyone has an iPhone budget. The markets where we've had the strongest demand are healthcare, office, college campuses, and airports and convention centers. And we're starting to get more involved in high-end hotels and high-rise residential. We don't do single family, which is something nearly everyone asks for, because once they see it in person, they want it, and I always feel bad saying no, but I take it as a compliment that they like our windows so much that they want it for their families. So if you meet those kind of broad criteria, we're probably close enough in cost once you account for our offsets to be interesting. And that's just on cost. That's not including the upside in having our glass in as a unique amenity to kind of differentiate your product.
You had mentioned at the beginning that it was an inexpensive way to get, or cost effective, I can't remember what the exact word was, to get lead
points. Most economical.
So how does that?
Because we can contribute points in several different categories. So the lead scorecard, there's different categories, and you add all the points up that you can achieve in each category, and that's how you get to silver, gold, or platinum status. And we bring kind of a basket of points, especially for as the basis of design. So you can start off pretty strong if you're going after a specific LEED certification, and then you can kind of cherry pick which additional products you want to use, low flow water or LED lighting to get to the status you want to get to.
So it takes you out of some categories you might otherwise be in, I guess.
Yeah, it's just we've got an unusually broad reach for a single product.
Can we talk a little bit more about cost? It sounds like it should be super expensive. And I know that's one of the benefits is that in the big picture, it's really not. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like what is the cost and the ROI again?
Sure. And you hit on it before. No developer is going to give us the time of day unless they think they can get a positive ROI with our glass. And the reason we've got 300 plus installations completed, another 300 in the works, and I'd probably guess another 1,000 or so in discussions is because we deliver a positive ROI, specifically by driving NOI, especially if you think of us as an amenity. Developers spend money on an art sculpture in the lobby or a rooftop bar or a nice gym. No one is calculating ROI on their gym equipment, right? But you invest in those things to make your product more appealing. But those are amenities only used by some people. Every occupant will experience the windows. CBRE did a study to see what building attributes people pay more for, and access to natural light was number one. And not just say they will pay more for it, but actually pay for it. People love having a view, they love natural light, and we essentially allow people to, developers to double down on that sort of proven investment. So in terms of cost, we are roughly 2 to 3 times as much as your typical high-performance low-E glass. So if all we were was a window, no one would ever pick us, right? That's a big price difference. But much like an iPhone is not just a phone, it's also a digital camera and a GPS and a portable computer. We're not just windows. We are windows plus interior blinds, plus exterior sunshades, plus a smaller HVAC system, plus smaller ongoing utility charges, plus happier, healthier occupants, and a whole bunch of lead points that you'd have to pay for elsewhere. So when you include all of our offsets and benefits, you meet the general criteria I mentioned earlier, kind of large-scale Class A type products. We're usually compelling. Our investors include Harvard, TIA, JP Morgan, USAA, Citi, GE, blue chip investors, and they're only going to invest in companies that deliver genuine value to their customers. So they've seen us, vetted us, talked with our customers directly, and they agree, yeah, this is a product that's going to deliver, a positive ROI, deliver what we promised and then some.
So not to mention, that glass is only one part of the window system. You've got framing, installation, all that other stuff. So when you say it's 2 or 3 times more expensive, it's probably not really, when you talk about what you're spending on your windows, there may be some offsets. It's only the glass. It's not, silicone costs the same, whether it's your stuff or somebody else's. So Jeff, what's the warranty that comes with View Glass?
We meet the standard warranty with other high-performance low-E glass of 10 years, and we have a 5-year warranty on the electronic component. Apple and Sony, which are kind of the gold standards in electronics, offer 1 year, so we went to 5. And we also have the option to extend both the electronics and the windows, beyond that, depending on what the individual project's sort of preferences are. And that can be extended kind of in an upfront pricing, or that can be used as, View as a service, which is sort of a subscription model, which can be used in CAM charges. So there's a few creative ways to extend the warranty for those who are interested.
Just made me think, what's the oldest or what's the longest running installation I don't know if it's with you guys. I don't know if you guys, I don't even know if you have competitors, actually. I'm guessing you probably do. But what's the longest running application of this product currently in service?
So I would say just under a decade. So the company itself had a predecessor company called Solidyme. And so we've got sort of older installations under same people, just different name. But what might be more interesting is electrochromic glass, which, like I mentioned, it's the same glass that's in the rearview mirror of your car, has AOCM testing standards. So it goes through kind of, I call it a health chamber. It's where they have high heat, high humidity, high UV exposure, and they cycle our glass through enough times to simulate a 30-year lifespan. And since our product has, it's all inorganic, meaning it doesn't degrade due to the weather, we passed 30-year lifespan simulation with zero degradation. First and only company to be able to do that. And we actually paid them to run it again. So we ran it for a 60-year simulated lifespan, zero degradation. So the product itself is going to last longer than the functional use of the building in many cases, which is kind of nice to know.
So the only opportunities or the repair and upgrade options along the way would be with the electronics, not with the glass itself.
Right, and then the software. The more buildings we have in service, the better we can operate our windows. So we're learning through feedback and experience from, we've got installations out in Hawaii and installations up in Boston, and each one is a little bit different. So we're learning that maybe tint level 2 should be just a shade lighter, and people seem to like it a little bit better. So we can remotely make that change and upload it so everyone has sort of the latest and greatest experience.
Very cool, like a Tesla.
Yeah.
So what do you see as the future of View Glass?
Good question. I think on a big picture level, there are three mega trends in commercial real estate. We've got health and wellness, sustainability, and connectivity, sort of smart building. And View kind of sits at the intersection of those three mega trends. So in my opinion, the future is very, very bright for us. On the West Coast where we're headquartered, everyone knows us, and so we're kind of popping up in new buildings left and right. Here in Florida, I've got more than 50 projects that I'm working on, but we're still making our way up the learning curve. But when I know you had Ray Crawford on here a couple months ago, when a veteran guy like Ray Crawford, who leads Crawford Tracy, the number one glazer in Florida, says he wants to work with us, that's a good sign that we're here to stay. If you look at the new building codes and kind of the big picture macro trends, I don't think there's going to be a Class A building in any sector that's going to be coming out of the ground in 2 or 3 years' time that doesn't have View Glass.
Yeah, so the future is bright.
Yeah, future is bright. Very happy to be in this industry with this product at this time.
So if someone wants to find out more about View Glass, where should they go? And if they want to contact you, how can they do that?
Sure. So my email is jeff.riley@viewglass.com, Riley, R-I-L-E-Y. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can follow us on Twitter. The handle is View Glass. Also follow us on LinkedIn. And we've got, folks across the country, across Canada, and Europe. So wherever you might be, we have local folks on the ground that I'm happy to connect you with, make sure that we're seeing if View Glass can provide value to you.
Well, Jeff, really interesting, and it's an exciting product. Let me just ask you one last question. Do you guys call it a product or a technology or both, or how do you position it?
Yeah, it really depends on who we're talking with, because we talk with, glazers, architects, GCs, developers, tenants. So we use both terms, so no, we don't get too picky there.
I think I like technology. I'm a technology fan. So anyway, really interesting technology, and thank you for sharing it with us, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Really interesting topic today, and I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the Everything Building Envelope podcast. And with that, this is Paul Beers saying until next time.
Thanks for joining us today. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. For more information on the Everything Building Envelope, previous episodes, show notes, bonus video content, and much more, check out our website, everythingbuildingenvelope.com.